Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Today's episode brings me back to my teaching days. And I remember just being able to read to the kindergartners or first graders. One of the books that I love to read, especially in music class, was a book called Abiyoyo, and it has part 1 and part 2. But the reason why I liked to read Abiyoyo was not so much of the story alone, even though it was your regular David and Goliath story. It was a story that at the end we would sing Abiyoyo, all right? During the book, we would sing Abiyoyo because the boy would, be able to, take the monster away with this song. And I just liked the song because it had a very Cuban link vibe to it. One of the first songs I learned how to play on my guitar was just like a simple G chord that was very reminiscent of that Cuban style music. When my cooperating teacher at the time, he was playing this song for the book, I was like, what is that? And he was like, oh, it's just this. And it sounded so familiar to me. And I was just like, wow, I really enjoy it. And this is so funny because it was a song that I would give to all of the new students that I had while I was the president of the music club. So people would come in for free guitar lessons. I would say, okay, well, we would learn the basics and scales and fingering, like patterns and stuff like that. And then before they go, I say, here, I'm going to give you something you can play. And it was that. It was just a simple chord progression. And I used that chord progression for the song because I learned it from my cooperating teacher, like how he did it. And it was just so funny when I did this song for the kids, you could just see all the kids kind of like kumbaya-ing. And it was definitely a magical moment. It was something where I had to ask myself, what's deeper than right now? And I'm sure you might be well aware of maybe your school days of when a teacher might ask you, who's in the story? What do you see, right? When did it happen, right? Why, etc. And then you figure out, okay, now we're understanding the story, right? We're getting deeper than just the words because we might not remember who was in the story. We might not remember the young boy and his grandfather. We might not remember what time it was. Was it day or was it night? Because our mind is not necessarily going to be focused on that starting off. Your mind is probably not focused on all of the aspects of what it can be doing. So yeah, sure. You might look at who's in your life or what's happening or when things are going to happen or your why. Most people, they just kind of fast forward to the why. They just kind of fast forward to, hey, this is what I think I need, right? This is going to make me feel good. But yet they're not looking at the players. They're not looking at their circle. They're not looking at when it's going to get done or giving themselves dates. Many people, they're just operating on, well, I hope things will go my way, right? I'm anticipating, right? Because we can start to read the story and we can maybe give ourselves, okay, what could happen next? And maybe that's life. What is going to happen tomorrow? We don't know, right? Something good can happen. Something bad can happen. Unfortunately, I know it's very pessimistic, but I can get in my car today and something can happen, right? My life can change. I don't want that change, right? I don't welcome that change, but maybe that change is exactly what I needed. Maybe that change was going to jolt me awake and say, hey, as much as I would have loved to just allow you to live life and to make sure you have a nice, strong mindset and you listen to Coaching in Session and you get your coaching and you speak with your mentors and you do all the things that you're supposed to do. Well, sometimes you're going to have different plans. Or I'm going to have different plans. And this is life speaking. So life is going to give you maybe what you don't necessarily want, but it might be exactly what you need. And for now, we have to begin to pay attention. Here I have this article, The Power of Who, What, When, Where, and Why. And then, of course, how. A mindset transformation. The article is going to talk about the basic 6 questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how. But then we're going to get into the inward questions of the mindset shift. Number 1, the who. defining your identity, right? Asking yourself the mindset perspective of who am I becoming? 2, what? Understanding your purpose and actions, right? Mindset perspective is what am I doing that aligns with my purpose? 3, you're mastering time and patience, right? The when aspect. Mindset perspective would be when is the right time for action? 4, choosing your environment wisely. This is the where. Mindset perspective, where am I putting my energy and my intention? 5, the why aspect, discovering your core motivation. Mindset perspective is why do I do what I do? And then lastly, we have our how. We're taking actions and executing our plans. The mindset perspective is how can I turn my thoughts into results? Here I give some easy steps that you can follow in the blog. Today, we're just going to be looking at the mindset perspective on this. So the blog is going to be helping you work through it by yourself. Podcast today is going to be talking about the mindset perspective and why it's so important. I don't know if you remember them, but if you do, the most important ones today are probably going to be 3 and 4, when and where. This is where many people, they get stuck. They might find themselves not doing the things that they're supposed to do. I think many people, they can start. Starting sometimes is not the hardest part. Keep on going is the hardest part, right? Being consistent is going to be hard, right? Starting can be simple. It's easy to go to the gym, get a gym membership, and show up for the first week. That's easy. But when your body is sore, when your mind is fatigued and tired, it becomes more difficult to do it now. The who am I becoming? That can be whoever you want. Maybe you're becoming a good person, right? A good man, a good woman, a good mom, a good dad. Maybe you're a good worker, right? But then again, ask yourself the question, do you want to become this person? Because if you're becoming someone that you're not, like I think of the book, it's called Becoming. Michelle Obama. It's not by accident. She had to do some work. Her husband, president, how many naysayers in the world, right? The attacks that he gets, she's going to get equally. The becoming aspect of who she was to who she became was a journey for her. And so she had to figure out, is this a person that I can be proud of? A person that my daughters can be proud of, my husband can appreciate. And so not saying that you have to like her as a person, but she went on a journey. She became someone. Most people are too afraid to step into that journey or too afraid to become a person or to accept a person that they have became. We have to figure out, who are we becoming? When we look at the what, the mindset perspective, again, is going to be, what am I doing that aligns with my purpose? If you have been doing the work here on the podcast and you listened to last week's episode or episodes, you should have already defined your purpose, your mission, your vision. You should have got clear on what you need to do. You should be understanding, how to step into leadership, being a forever student. All of these things should have already been work that you have done. And you only have to go back, I think, like 3 episodes, maybe at most 5. And you can get all the learning and all the education you need to make sure that the what aspect aligns with your purpose. Because we can keep on talking about purpose all day long, but if you're not doing the work to even listen to a couple episodes to define your purpose, then maybe the person you're becoming is a person who's just remaining stagnant, or the person who wants to be given things. Sometimes you have to search for meaning in life, because I always say, when it comes to life, there is no meaning. We have to look for it. We have to create it. Are you even doing that? I don't know. But then we look at 3, right? The when aspect. And this is one of the main critical components of, am I doing what I need to do? Because most people will wait for their whole entire life if they can, right? When is the right time? I remember when I was mid to late 20s. And I was like, okay, I went through my high school sweetheart and, had a bunch of girls and stuff like that. And I said, well, when am I going to have kids? When am I going to start a family? It was something that I wanted to do, again, because, one of the values that was instilled upon us growing up, our character essentially was to have a family, to be close knit, to be the best dad or the best uncle or the best person you can be. I said I wanted to have kids of myself, for myself and, of my own. So I said, what can I do? One of the things I said was, well, I want to have a family by 35. Well, great, right? I've given myself this intention, this vision for me to have kids at 35. But the problem is, well, I can go out and get the wrong girl and have kids with. But then I would say, was that a good idea? I gave myself until 35 to find the right woman to have kids with because it's easy to have children. It's more difficult to find the right person to have children with. Now, of course, I don't believe there's one person for you to have children with. I believe there's multiple people that you can have children with and find happiness and joy. But I was giving myself this idea of, well, I'm going to have kids later, right? Sure enough, right? The intention. But then again, I was thinking about when was the right time. 35, right? At 35, everything will be perfect. My business will be good. The money situations will be good. And I was like, everything will be exactly where I needed to be by 35. Well, I'm 37 now. And, of course, I can look at if I have things that are 40 and I can think of more ideal situations. But again, we are doing exactly what we need to do. We're doing just fine. Sometimes you have to say, you know what? There is no right time. There is no perfect moment. The perfect moment or the right time was right now or, was yesterday or something, right? So we have to give ourselves the intention of, we just can't keep putting off for the right time because we think there is going to be a better time for us to take action. Very similar to the next question, the where aspect. Where am I putting my energy and attention to? Many people, they put their energy in the wrong places. They might put it in a dead-end job. They might put it in a dead-end relationship. And so, like I said, very similar. I could have had kids. I could have put my energy into a woman that would have caused me headaches. And I know there's going to be, women, I'm not saying it's every woman, of course, but, there's women who will go out and they would, demand child support from someone that they had a kid with. Where's the love? Because again, you can co-parent, you can do things and you don't need any money. I don't even mind if, for example, let's say things didn't work out in my marriage. I would take custody of the kids. My wife wouldn't have to pay a dime. I don't need money. I don't need child support. I don't need support. I don't need help, right? I understand why people need help. Kids are expensive. I understand some people don't make enough money. But then again, that goes to the same aspect of what are you doing? Are you making changes or are you not? I think of, multiple women who were stay-at-home wives, and the reason why they need child support is because they can't support themselves. And not saying that they can't get a job and that they can't do the things that they need to do. It's just that they made a choice. The vows of marriage have become so watered down where it's like, okay, I don't feel love for you anymore. There's someone else who wants to give me more attention, or there's someone else who looks better, or, is more dashing or charming. And I mean, we can go down the list of all the external stimulus that can make a person fall out of love or to fall in love with someone else. But then again, what are you doing, right? Because I think of the, putting your attention to something. If you put attention to your marriage, that marriage is going to be there, right? You're giving attention to it. But then again, our world today is so busy. We focus on our jobs. We focus on other people. We focus on everyone else but the people we love. And not only is your wife or your spouse going to leave you, but your kids are going to leave you too, right? But if you're present, if you're there, if you're doing everything you want to do, the love is going to keep on flowing. Yeah, sure. Where are you putting your attention to in your marriage or your career or your life in general? So important, right? So 3 and 4, I believe, if you do some good work there and you kind of go through these areas in the blog, the power of who, what, where, why, and how, you're going to begin to transform your mindset so much more quickly and readily. Now, when we get to 5, the why, this is a popular one, right? Everyone wants to know their why, right? You might hear a motivational speech of figure out your why, figure out your purpose, right? We talked about purpose a lot last week. Today, we're talking about the why aspect. But why is number 5? It's basically asking the question of, why do I do what I do? Because if you go to work, why do you go to work? Well, I go to work because I need to pay the bills. Well, why do you need to pay the bills? I need to pay the bills so I can have lights. Why do you need to have lights? Because I need to be able to see. Why do I need to be able to see? Because I want to, be able to play video games. Why do you need to play video games? Because I like them. Why do you like them? Because they make me feel good. Why do they make you feel good? Because they give me something that I'm missing in life. We can go down 7 questions of why. We can start to get deeper into why we do the things. Most people, when they get to their why, they do that why because they don't want to be homeless, or they don't want to be hungry, or they don't want to be sad. They would rather just kind of be in that homeostasis where things are just okay, but not great. I encourage people, why would you just stay in okay when greatness is always an option? It's always a potential. So many people, their why is stopping them. Their why is it's not big enough. It's not great enough yet. So you have to do the work. You could do it here in this blog today. Figure out, how can my why be so great, can be so big, very similar to your dreams. That why should scare you. That why should be something where you say, no matter what, I'm going to make sure this why comes to reality, right? I'm going to make sure I do my why every single day, not some days or sometime, all the time. Then we get into the how aspect, right? Taking the actions. How can I turn my thoughts into the results? Because we can plan, we can conceptualize, we can create our vision boards, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get to our destination. If you want to make $1 million, how do you do it? Right? You can go to YouTube. There's this 6-step process or 10-step process to become a millionaire. In a sense, yes, very true. Because if you take a millionaire and you take all his money away or her money away, guess what happens? They can get it all back because they know something. They know that they could do it. They did do it, and they can replicate it. Most people who have a hard time making money, they don't believe that they can make an abundance of money. They don't know how to make an abundance of money. Of course, you can do what's, famous and fads and stuff like that and become a YouTuber or a streamer and make a bunch of money. I think there is, trying to think of, you could be day traders, like things that are going to make you a bunch of money quickly, hopefully, right? The how aspect of how you do it, you need to make sure it's also something you enjoy doing, right? Because if maybe you make money doing something that you don't love doing, at some point you're going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. But you need to find something that you can just kind of fall in love with, that it doesn't matter when you do it or how you do it. You're just going to do it because it feels right. It feels good. Now, sometimes those things don't make any money. Well, I remember when I was a teacher, right? I didn't make any money. But then again, the how aspects for how I was going to execute my plans was teaching. But then it was even beyond that. It was the side gigs. It was the hustle. And it was everything that I knew wasn't just teaching. Teaching was the intrinsic aspect. It was the fulfilling bit. It was what was fueling me. It was what was keeping me in the game. And in life, you need to make sure that you stay in this fight, because at some point you're going to want to give up. At some point you're going to want to give in. At some point you're going to question what is going on. And I encourage you to, during those times, to, lean on people, to get a coach, to get a mentor, to get someone who can, not only look at what you're doing, but be able to support in everything that you're trying to step into. Because when we start to look at this article, the power of who, what, when, where, why, and how, we can get a good understanding of what we need to do. We can look at the different areas and we can say, okay, this is what I need to do. And we can make sure that these 6 questions are going to be able to answer what we need to be doing in our day. Now, of course, these are just tools at the end of the day. We have to be the carpenter. We have to be the person that knows how to use and leverage these tools. Many people, they think that if they have some tools, so, I have the tools and I'll be good to go. And one of the reasons why I like to ask guests about, like, are they tips and tricks or tools that someone can use in the audience, is because the audience members, they just love tools. So, I don't know if they have a profession in carpentry or they're like welders or something. Tools are like a keyword for people saying, okay, this is good. Tips are a keyword for people. Okay, this is good. I used to say they're seeds. There's going to be things that resonate with you that I say, and there's going to be things that, I say that, it doesn't hit home. And it's perfectly fine, right? You take what you need, you leave what you don't need, right? You take what you like, you leave what you don't like. This is basically a buffet. Coaching in session is a place for you to take what is going to serve you, not what doesn't serve you. You get to listen to guests that are going to bring about goodness in your life. And then maybe a person doesn't resonate with you exactly. So you say, I'm not going to listen to this episode. That's the true freedom of coaching in session. That's the true freedom of personal development, of self-help. You get to decide what you need right now. So figure out your who, figure out your what, figure out your when, your where, your why. And then you can all put it together and figure out how you're going to do it. Now, of course, you can be a person that says, you know what, I don't want to go on that journey by myself. And you can reach out to us, Reven Concepts. You can get yourself some coaching. Just sign up for a consultation. We can begin there. Maybe you want to just ask simple questions, reach out to us, coachinginsession@gmail.com. And all of these things are going to be the catalyst for your change, because we just can't simply be reading the story and not really doing the work to fully understand it. It's a deep dive into our life. The story of us is a story in a sense. We can look back on the pages of where we began, when we were born, when we were growing up, and we can look back at the stories and the memories, and we can smile, maybe we can cry, maybe we can be joyous of what's to come. We can try to fast forward and get to the end so we can make sure, did we do the right thing? Is it a happy ending? And this is good to create a true meaningful life. If we can say, all right, let me look at everything. Let me get down to the root. Let me understand what's behind the words. Let me get behind what I see every single day. How do I feel? Am I doing the things that I need to be doing? Will I continue to do the things that I need to be doing? Right? Right? Because when you're going to stop running, right? You might be on the treadmill and you're running, your brain's telling you to stop and you say no, but the moment right before you're going to stop. What if you did it? What if you said, I know I'm about to stop. I'm going to keep on going. And you keep on doing it until you run that mile or you run that 10 miles or whatever it is. The goal, what is your goal? And when you can figure out how you can prolong the angst, the hardship, the struggle, the challenge, to move past the comfort and to say, I don't want you right now. I want to figure out what I need to do. Because when you're watching a movie or when you're trying to figure out your life, there's always going to be a moment where there's a valley where things don't go your way and you need to figure out how to get back up. Some people, they never make it past that valley. Some people, they never make it out that valley. But if you are giving yourself the intention, if you're looking at this article, figuring out the root of everything, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how, you can begin to transform your mind. You can begin to transform your life. It just begins with you understanding there's a much bigger story that is yet to be told.